Hello everyone, this is Prem Kumar. In this video, we are going to look about the sign up options which we can do it in the login screen. Pega by default, they don't provide the sign up screen, so we have to custom build the sign up option. The main role of sign up screen is to create operators. We already know how to create operators. I already explained in one of my previous video where you can look into. We can create operators in multiple ways. Manually, we can provision the operator, or we can also create operators on the fly when you use the single sign-on. Based on the audience, Pega applications can be classified into two categories. One, internet-facing application, where the end users will be the real-time customers of the organization. Here, your application can be accessed via internet. Everyone can access your application. The second one is intranet application. Intranet application is where the end users can be the organizational employees. It can be the bank employees who use this Pega application to treat the customer. Here, your application will be well secured. No one from outside can access your application via the internet. What I feel is, when you have your application as intranet, mostly you can provision creating the operators using the single sign-on authentication service. You can create the operators on the fly. You don't need to have the sign up option. But in some places, when you have your application as internet facing application, in that case, you can have the sign up option to provision the user account creation. I will start with creating the HTML UI screens, and then I will use the links to connect the screens, and finally we will see how we can create the operators using the unauthenticated activities. For this, I also prepared a short prototype. I will walk you through the prototype, how the screens is going to look. As you see in the screen, this looks little familiar, right? This is like the login screen, but I added a new button here. It's a sign up button. If you click on this sign up button, then we should be provided with a different screen where we can capture all the user account details. I have provided minimum details. My mandatory details can be the username, which helps to create an operator ID, password definitely we need, and then I will also get the email address. Once I gather all these details, then the user can click on create account. So that will successfully create a new operator ID into Pega, and then we also provide an option for them to log in. So the user can click this return to login and then go to the login page, provide the details, and then he can log in into the Pega application. I'm going to implement all these screens into the sign up option. So how many screens are we going to use? The first screen where we are going to use the sign up link, and the second screen is going to be a brand new screen where we are going to capture all the details, and finally a confirmation screen. Let's start with creating the screens. So I just launched my Pega server, and this is the login screen which I didn't customize. As you see here, there is an option of trouble logging in which helps to reset your password. If you click here, you will get a different screen where you can use the username to reset your password. As you see in the markup, we have to create a similar link here, sign up link. So what we can do is we can identify the HTML element and then copy the same element and create a new element for sign up. We already know the HTML rule that is responsible for this login screen. Let's go there and update the web-login, the HTML rule. So I'm just logging in into the Designer Studio. I already marked the rule as my favorite. As you see, web-login, it is under @base class. The first step when you want to customize any out-of-the-box rule is you need to have it into your application layer. And all these login rules, it should go under the unauthenticated rule set. If you look at my previous video, I already set up everything. I created an unauthenticated application layer. I also created an unauthenticated rule set. So you can customize this, or you can save as this rule into the unauthenticated rule set and do all your changes. That will be reflected to the unauthenticated users when they launch the login screen. So the first step is you have to save as this rule and then put it into the right layer. I'll use it as no branch, alive security. It should be under alive security rule set, and then just do a create and open. Now you have to identify the HTML element that is responsible for the trouble login link. So you can do Ctrl F and search on it. That will give you the div tags that is responsible for the display. As you see in the screen, these are the HTML tags that is responsible to display the trouble login link. Now what we can do is we can just copy this and paste it into new tags, and then just update the link label. So I'll just say, instead of trouble login, I'll say sign up. and then do a save and then do a check-in. Now if you go to the incognito window and try to launch the URL, then you will see the sign up link. Click on the link. This is exactly going to work the same like the forgot password, because we just copied the code and just we changed the label. We didn't change the activity or we didn't change the on click action. Everything we didn't change, but we will do that as a second step. In the first step, we will concentrate on building the screens. Now my first screen is ready. I have included the sign up link. The next screen is I need to create an user form to gather all the details that is responsible to create or sign up a new operator ID. One important thing to note is there are a lot of articles in the Pega community where they use some table tags to render some kind of customized screens. I would recommend to use only the div tags and not to use the table tags. Now I'll show you how to use the div tags. For that, first let's log out this and then go to the login screen. If you look at the screens, you see it looks a little bit similar, right? I want to exactly do username, password, but I have to add one more field here. And then instead of login button, I have to use a button called create account. So what I will be doing is I will be copying all these div tags and put it into a new HTML file. To do that, you can use your browser developer tool. I'm going to use inspect and then you can scroll to find the right element. I want to get the div tags of this username, password and the button. So you can use this pointer and then if you click here, you will find there is a div class content container, and under the div class you will find everything like the login screen, everything is there. So what I will do, I'll just copy this. There are 3 dots here. Click on that and then go to copy and then do a copy element. Now go to your editor. I'm using Visual Studio Code and then create a new text file. Select the language as HTML. I'll say the language HTML and then just copy everything here. Once you copy everything and then just do a save as and put it into some right directory. I already have it under YouTube directory. I'm going to say it's going to be Pega registration and then just do a save. Now that we created a new HTML file, we just copied the div tags of the current login screen. Now if you go to the folder under documents YouTube and then just double click it, it will open up the HTML page. It's just my local page. It is not on the server side. I just copied the HTML tags into a file and then I'm just launching the file. As you see, this is also the login screen, but there are no styles applied, right? You see the username, password, trouble login, sign up, everything is there, but there are no styles. So how to add styles? Now go to the login screen. Now if you click here and then check the styles at the right side, there you will find there is a CSS file that is responsible to provide the styles. Click on the CSS file and you see this is the entire content. You also find the same rule in the Pega Designer Studio. Now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to copy everything and then paste it into the HTML file itself. Ideally in real time, we will refer it from a different reference, but for now, for this demo purpose, I'm just going to copy everything at the top. So I'll move this div tag below and then I have to introduce style tag. If you want to introduce any styles into a HTML file, then definitely you should go under the style tag. So I will say style and inside that I'm going to copy paste and then do a save. Once you save, now try to launch the same HTML page again. You will have a different look and feel, right? So this is the same HTML page without styles. You see just the content, and this is the HTML page where we applied the styles. So how these styles are getting applied is, if you go to the div tag, there they will have some classes. For example, let's say this div element having the forgot button, they have the class as link button, right? So if you search on this link button class under styles, definitely there should be some styles applied. You see under link button, they have the background color, they have the outline, text shadow. There are a lot of styles. The CSS styles were applied to these div classes. So that is how the styles are mapped to the HTML elements. Okay, now that we have to customize this HTML document, right? We have to provide username, password, and we have to introduce a third field, user email. And then we also need to change this button, and we don't need all these things. As a first step, we will remove everything from the HTML document. So go to HTML document, scroll to your HTML, which is at the below, and then you have to keep it till the login button. You see this is where the HTML element starts and username is there, password is there, login button is there, After login button, the forgot password, everything comes here. So let's remove everything right from here. Till the end I'm going to remove. I'm just going to remove everything. Just make sure your div tags are properly closed. As you see, only this div tag is closed. There is one more div tag which is not closed. So somehow I just did or removed some other div tags. So what I will do, I'll just add a div tag here. So I'll just added a div tag. Now you can verify that. Yeah, now everything is perfectly closed. Just do a save and then launch the same HTML file again. Launch. Now you see only the username, password and the login button. We removed everything. We will keep on updating and then we will keep on unit testing by launching the HTML file. Next, what I'm going to do, I'm going to introduce a new field, the user email field. The user email field is going to look the same like the user ID field. So what I can do, I can just copy it. I'll just copy this div tag and then paste it below the field password. And here I'm just going to change the label for now. Instead of username, the label is going to be user email. So there are two tags here. One is for label and the other is for the input element. So input is of type text value 20 and the placeholder you can change it to user email and the name also I'm going to change it to user email. Ideally, there are other elements also you can change. For example, you can change the div class if you want to apply different styles to your user input as well as the user email. For now, the user ID and user email is going to share the same kind of style. So I'm not going to add a new div class here. And there are a lot of things I just reused as such. Now just do a save. I just added a new div element for the user email. Now if you go back and then do a unit test, you should see user email is also there. The icon, I just copied it. I'm not going to update, but if you want, you can update the email icon here. Now the final thing is I have to update this login button to create account. Again, go here and then scroll down. Instead of login, I'm going to say create account. Do not worry about this activity call and the other elements for now. We will update it as a next step. For now, just change the labels and make your HTML elements or the documents ready. Do a save and quickly do a unit test. You should see create account. Now everything is right, but only thing what I see here is the padding. You see here there is only less space and here there are a lot of space. There is some top padding is applied somewhere. Let's find it out. We already added the styles into the HTML document. So go to the HTML document again. Let's see how the top padding is applied. If you scroll little down, let's find the div elements from where the top padding is applied. So this is my topmost div element, content container. So I feel this is where the padding is applied. If you go and search for content container, you see for this div class, there are different styles were applied. If you scroll little down there, you find there is a padding added as 44 pixel. Now if I just change it to 200 pixel and then just do a save and then launch this again, you see now it rendered perfectly, right? But in real time, you should not be doing this. Don't update your existing classes. Instead, I will quickly show you how to change it. So what I'll do is I'm going to add a new div class here. I'll call it as div class and then content container registration. This is just a sample. You can expand it and do whatever customization you want. And then I'll close this. Now I have to close this div tag. So where I will close this div tag is just before the topmost thing. So I'll come down and then I'll add here. Now do a save. Now what we did is we just added a new class here so that we don't want to update the styles of the existing class because this may be used at a different place. If you want to specifically update something, then add a new div class here, then apply styles to this div class. So what I will do, I'll just copy this one for now, Control C, and then find the styles where we added the content container. You see here. Now what I will do, I'll just say I need to update this style. You should always start with dot if you want to apply styles for your div class. Then add this entire content and there I'm not going to update all other thing. I'm just going to add padding as 200 and then revert it back to and then do a save. Now let's launch it. You see this is perfectly all right now. Okay, now our second screen is ready. Let's go to the last screen. On the last screen, as soon as you click on create account, you should get this success message. The final option is pretty easy. We just have to display a label and a button. So to do that, what I'm going to do, I'll just save as this Pega registration. Just do a save as into a different name. I'll say Pega registration underscore success and then do a save. I'll use all the styles there. Only thing I'm going to change here is I'm going to remove the username, password and the email content from here. I'll remove 1 div tag, 2 div tag, 3 div tag. So all these are removed. And then inside I'll just add a paragraph maybe. That will be very simple. For now I'll just hard code it, but in the coming steps in the video we will dynamically send the message here. I'll say successfully created a new user account and then do a save. Now let's launch this Pega registration success. You should see a simple screen is rendered. Now we have successfully created 2 HTML files and updated 1 existing HTML rule. Okay, now we created HTML documents. Let's translate it into HTML rule. To do that, first I'm going to add all these CSS styles into the Pega login screen CSS. Pega login screen CSS is already out of the box one. So let's customize that. I already saved it as favorites. Pega login screen. And then save it into your unauthenticated rule set. It's going to be here, the real life. Do a create and open. And then you add the class, the new class, which will be container content registration. I'm just going to add this class into the CSS file. I can add it near to content, or you can just add it from here. This should be fine. Now that we added a new style from the PY login screen, the next step is we have to create 2 HTML rules. To do that, you open this web.login. From here, you just say create. Let's call it as user registration. Let it be under _base class, and the rule set should be alive security. And then do a create and open. So inside here, we are going to copy paste everything. To do that, you should start with some standard best practices of HTML coding. So you see, already we have web-login, which is used for the login screen. There they start with some tags for the unsupported browser login, some kind of HTML elements they have included. I'm not going to use other scripts or other things. I'll just straight away start with the head tag. Just copy the entire head tag and then paste it here. We will remove some of the things. For example, you don't need to have this captcha image because we are not going to display captcha for sign up. And then we'll also remove this step. Just remove the entire pen content. As you see here, we referred the style sheet of PY login screen. So that is why we don't want to include all the styles into this HTML rule, because we refer a new rule, the CSS rule. All other things you can keep it as such. If you want, you can explore everything and just remove the unwanted thing. But for now, I'm just keeping the head like this, and then it starts with body. Say body. And inside the body, you just copy paste the entire content. So go to the Visual Studio Code, and then from here, you can copy the entire content, excluding the styles. So you will start with the div tag. Just copy this into body and then close your body. And also make sure to use the HTML start and end tag. There you will find first HTML tag. Language ENUS. I'm going to use the same thing as the very start. Before head, I'll use that HTML, and then I'll just close the HTML tag. Now that we created a new HTML rule, let's save as this HTML rule for the success message on the same class, same layer, create and open. And here we will just update the body element. We don't need to have the username, password, and we already have a HTML file for this. So just copy the entire div tags. It's going to be a very simple div tag, and then update it into the HTML rule. Their body content, I'll just remove it and paste it from the file. Okay, now that we have created 2 new HTML rules in Pega and updated 1 HTML rule, which is web-login. So we are done with the first step of defining all the screens. In the next step, we are going to create links between these screens using activity rule. Let's see how to do that. Okay, before going into the second step, let's understand some basics in the HTML actionable links. For example, what you see in the screen, I just open a simple form with 2 input fields, first name, last name, and then we have a submit button. If you look closely, here we have a form tag, and there you define an attribute of action that refers to some page. Okay, action underscore page.php. And then we have 2 inputs, input type of text, input type of text. and then the third is input type of submit. Okay, so now we have first name, last name, submit. If you click on the submit button, the form data will be sent to a page called action page. So whatever form data we have, it can be sent to an action page. This is just like a normal form, right? When you have some form with a lot of input fields, you capture all the fields and you do a submit, all the field details will be submitted to the page, right? Just click on submit. What you note here is first name John, last name Doe. You see F name is the value of name attribute, and then the value of value is John, right? F name equal to John, and then here the second field name is L name. So this get posted to the server. Okay, the name attribute get posted. Just remember that. And also the third interesting thing is type submit. So whenever you see an attribute of type submit, and when you click some action, this field will be responsible to submit the form data. It means all these details will get submitted to the page which is configured as an action attribute in the form tag. Whenever you run an activity, you can pass parameter, right? And the parameter can also be passed such that, right? F name equal to John. First name can be a parameter, last name can be a parameter. So when you run an activity, you can pass parameters as query string. Also, you can also run an activity by specifying py activity equal to the activity name, which we are going to see next. Okay, now let's go back to the Business Studio. We will explore the web login, the HTML elements that is for the forgot password. I already copied the entire content into an editor. You see here, these are the div tags that is responsible for trouble login or reset password. The first thing what you note here is this is an actionable link. So on click, you call a function click forgot button. So let's check that function, what it does. Search for it, click forgot button. You see this is a function. It just do some toggle, and then it also finds the element text user ID, which is the element attribute for user ID and password. It resets everything. It just make it empty, and then it also finds an element sub underscore forgot password, and then it performs the clickable action on that element. Let's open this element first. If you copy this and check, this is the second div tag that is part of the trouble logging. Here what we do is we go to this element and then we perform the on click action. So you see this element is of type submit. There are three possible values of a submit, as you can see from the tooltip of Visual Studio. Submit, we already saw, it submits all the form data to the server. So what is the name here? You see it is already a name value pair. We say py activity and then code security. This is the activity name. This is the activity class. So what we do here is we pass the activity name which needs to be executed, and to which form it should get passed. You can also find the form data or the form tag here. If you scroll little up, there you find form name main, method post, on submit it as an action, and then this is the main thing, action. So in action, what we are doing, we are going to pxthread.pxrec URI. Here, if you go to clipboard and check, this will contain the server URL. So what we are doing, we are posting an activity name to the server URL to get executed, and by engine code, whenever it accepts an input parameter of py activity, it will try to execute that activity. And one more additional points on this form tag is, whenever you see two things here, on submit, action, first it performs the on submit. So it performs this function first, and then it goes to action, and then it executes the submitted data to this page. So we know this activity is responsible for rendering the forgot password screen. Let's also check it out. If you go to this activity and then just search for it, a small tip: to search on PZ rules, you have to enable on the preferences, you have to enable the diagnostic features on your operator preferences. Now search for it and open the activity. So this activity, what it does is, in the first step, it creates a page of forgot password to capture all the details, and then it opens the HTML rule py forgot password. Now we got the picture how to render a different page or link between different pages. So from one page, in an actionable button, you have to call an activity, and that activity can use so HTML to render a different HTML rule. And we also see how py activity is getting used. Now let's also test that py activity. If you just copy this entire thing, just copy here and open localhost, and this will pass as a query string. If you just paste like this, this is the server, px request URI will be here, and then you say py activity name, pz forgot password. Just click here. What it does, it executes the activity and then it renders the screen. Now let's open the network tab from the developer tool and then try to execute the same thing again. You will find under code security, you see the query string parameter is py activity, the parameter it gets passed. So we also now know how to execute an activity from a HTML role. All you have to do is do a form submit and pass the name as the py activity, the name value pair. Now we will do that for the first screen. Go to Designer Studio, web login, and here we know that sign up, this is the div tags for the sign up. So we will replicate the same thing like how we did for trouble logging in. So first thing what we have to do is we have to create a new function, exactly like click forgot button. There is a function is there. So I'll just search for the function first and then create a new function here. I'm going to say sign up. Here also I can just remove the username and password, no problem. I have to specify an element ID for the sign up. So again I will go to sign up first, search for sign up, and here what is the element ID? I should have a different element ID because I have the same element ID here, sub forgot password. So here I'm just going to say sign up. And now if you go to the function and then say I want to get the element of sign up and then perform the click action on that element. Now let's go back again to the sign up, and here you see what is the click action here. It is of type submit. So it is going to submit the name here. So py activity, we need to create a new activity here. Let's quickly create a new activity. Go to create menu and then technical activity. I'm going to say user registration, and the class I'm going to specify it as data admin operator ID because this is all it's going to be under the operator ID. So I'll use this class and then create and open. Now here you just use the show HTML. That is all good. Just use show HTML and then use the HTML stream user registration. And one more important thing to note is if you go to security tab, you should not enable this require authentication to check. Instead, you should enable allow invocation from browser. So check this option and uncheck this option. When you do a save, it's going to throw you an error because when you use this option of invoke from the browser, you have to enable a privilege here. Now we have to create a new privilege here. So I'm going to say sign up. I'll use the same privilege into different unauthenticated activities. So I'll just refer it as sign up. Click here and then use the right layer. It's going to be A-Live security and then create and open. Do a save. Now that we have created a new privilege called sign up. Now we have to add this privilege to the right access group, the unauthenticated access group, right? If you go to access group, the unauthenticated access group, you find that the access group is referring to the access role, the out of the box access role, Pega rules guest. Now what we have to do is we have to create a new access role here. I'm going to call it as A-Live sec. So I'll say A-Live sec and then click to create open a new access role because we have to customize the access role so that we provide the access role to object of data admin operator ID and then include the privilege. That's why we are now customizing the access role. We are using our own access role here. Create and open. So first we have to save this access role to add privilege. We can also clone all the existing access role to objects. So what I can do is I can say Pega rules guest. I will clone it from the existing or out of the box guest access role. Just do a clone. Okay. You will see all those access classes gets cloned. One interesting class to note is on the data admin operator ID. Just scroll to find the data admin operator ID. You see here data admin operator ID. Click on it and here you will find we are able to read or open the operator IDs and then we can also execute activities. Here you need to add the privilege also. Just add the privilege. We already added the privilege as sign up and level can be 5 so that it can be executed in production also. Now just do a submit here. So what we did here is we created a new privilege and included the privilege in the activity rule, and also we included the privilege into the right access group, the unauthenticated access group via the access role to object. Make sure you come back to this A-Live unauthenticated access group and then do a save, so that your new access role gets saved to the unauthenticated access group. Now you can do the save of this activity and this should get saved. And now you can also do a check-in. Now go to the web login, checkout, and in the sign up, you have to change the activity name. You have to say data admin -operator ID and then the activity name. The activity name which we created is user registration. So I'm going to use the same activity here. And on click, what it does remove error message first. We can also remove the error message, and then because it is of type submit, it's going to submit this name, or this activity is going to be query string to our server. Now let's do a save and then do a check-in. Now let's test this change from the incognito mode. Go to incognito mode, localhost, and from here you click sign up. Still I'm getting this old password thing. You know why? Because I did a small mistake. I didn't call the new function, the sign up function. I'm still calling this forgot password function for the sign up. Just change this to sign up. I'll just remove this and put it to sign up function. Then do a checkout, check-in. Now if you launch a new incognito mode, click on this sign up, you should see the sign up page. We have a username, password, user email, and then we can also create the account. Now we have to make a link between this screen to the confirmation screen. So let's do that straight away. Let's go to the second HTML, the user registration. And from here, you see it is pretty simple. We don't use any function. We just do a direct type of submit. So as soon as you submit, this will get updated to the form. So here we didn't specify any form. So first thing, specify a form here. So to specify a form, again you can go to web login, and from here you can just do a copy paste and do a little update. So here you see the form. I'm going to copy the entire thing. You can paste it inside the body. So I'll say form, and then main method is post on submit. I'm not going to do anything on submit. So I'll just remove this entire attribute, and then action, it's going to be the same thing. I'm going to execute an activity to the server URL. So it's going to be the server URL is going to be same. And then these are all, it's okay, no problem. So what I will do, this is the first thing, form. And I also have this button as type submit. So definitely if I specify an activity of the right class, then it's going to do the submit. So here again, I have to create a new activity, just like how we use the user registration. I'm going to just save as this rule, and I'm going to say user registration underscore confirmation. That will be my activity name. It's going to be under data admin operator ID under the same layer, and then do a create and open. So instead of calling user registration, it's going to call user registration confirmation, and then do a save. You see this activity is also of the same security, sign up, and we already add the sign up in the access role. So we don't have to worry about anything. We can now just straight away go ahead and add this into the HTML rule. Now we created an activity. Just go to the HTML rule of user registration. From here, we have to call this activity. It's going to be of class data admin operator ID dot and the name user registration confirmation. Here, one more important thing to note is whenever you would want to do some form submit, Pega do expect some kind of authentication parameter. I've seen many times in many places, in many discussions, people have used the username password in this place. Never use that. Never hardcode or directly embed your username and password into these kind of HTML rule. Instead, what you can do is you can pass another query string parameter. It can be PZ auth, and then you can specify guest. So you provide an guest authentication, and then you can execute this activity. Make sure that authentication is not enabled for this activity, and then when you pass this, the execution will go good. Now let's just check in this rule, and then let's test it in the incognito. Localhost, sign up. Not going to provide any details here. Just click create account. You see we are into the third page. I see there is a small error that div class. I have to update that. Let's go there. The error div tag is because I didn't have the right tags here. Just do it and then do a check-in. If you test it again, then the error will be gone. Okay, now the final link is on clicking on return to login, you should come back to the login screen. So we have to do that link as well. So it's like a circle. Now you go to the confirmation HTML, do a checkout, and from here, what you have to do is you don't want to provide any type of name here. You don't want to execute any activity. All you have to do is just launch the URL. So here also you have to use the form data. To use the form data, again, I'm going to use or copy the form content here because we can just reuse it as such. I'll just copy the form content from the user registration and paste it into the user registration confirmation. So just place it inside the body tag, and this is going to just do an action onto this page, and we are not submitting any type of data to that page. You can also remove this on click, this is not needed, and then do a save, check-in. Now let's test the entire flow between screens. Incognito, localhost, sign up, create account. You get the message. You have to update this label. We'll just update it. So on clicking on this, you have to go to the login page. So that is also working. Final change, just update this confirmation. Instead of create account, just change it to return to login. So we have completed our second step. Now the last final step is we have to create the operator IDs from the input details that we get from the sign up registration form. Here you can see list of activities, the out of the box activities that can help with operator ID creation. But I cannot use these activities as such because most of these activities or the called activities, they use the authentication. Since I have to execute everything in an unauthenticated mode, I cannot use these activities. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create my own activity, but I'm going to reuse these steps, but I'm going to create a new activity, an unauthenticated activity to complete the sign up process. For this, I'm just going to save as this activity just for this demo purpose. What I'm going to do, I'm going to say demo create operator. So I'm going to just remove all the steps except the first two steps. And if you see the parameter, I see organization, division, unit. All these you can also use some kind of template or a model operator to get the value. For now, I'm just going to hard code some of the places. All I'm going to use is only the user ID, the password, and access group itself I'm going to hard code, and the email which we get as an input. So if we go to this step, the first step, if you see, it does a page new. It also applies the PY default, that is the out of the box data transform that initializes the properties on this data admin operator ID class. If you open this, you will find a lot of properties that gets initialized. So we can use this step as such. And in the second step, we can do little customization. For now, my organization, division, unit, I can straight away hard code it. My organization is A Life, then division is clients, and unit I just gave unit. So these are all kind of mandatory which you should fill. User identifier, I'm going to accept it as parameter. So I'll say param dot username, and access group. For now, I'll just hard code it to my current access group. Just copy this and hard code it under this access group place. Additional access group, I'm going to leave it empty. Username is going to be the same parameter, and password, I'll just use this password. And one more thing, the email address. It will be like py address of email, which is a value group property, and then py email address. And this will have param dot user email. So these are the three parameters I need: username, user email, and password. I will also update the parameters tab by removing the other unwanted parameters. I'm just going to remove everything and say username, password, user. Now we get all these things to get mapped. Then we can also do a obj save. This is a very simple activity I gave. You have to do a lot of error handling later, but for now let's test it. Let's do right now and then do a test. Now you do a check-in. Now this is the activity that is responsible to create operator, and this activity, it should be called when you submit the second screen, right? The second screen is the second HTML rule, which is user registration. If you scroll down, you see that calls an activity user registration confirmation. So this is the activity from where you have to create operators. So let's add a new step here and then call the newly created activity. It is a demo create operator, and just pass all the parameter page. Do a save and then do a check-in. Now we know that this activity accepts three parameters, right? Username, user email, and password. And this should be configured into the HTML rule. So if you go to user registration HTML rule, and there you should give the right name. It should be username, not the user identifier. So let's change it. Let's give it as username. The name is the key criteria which gets submitted. So username, and then the next is password. Let's give the name as password. That is exactly correct. And then the third parameter is user email. So all looks good. Do a save, do a check-in. Now let's see if the operator is successfully created or not. Now I do a sign up. From here, I'm going to give the name TechRide with PK, and then rules, email p@g.com. I just give some random email. Here, I'm also going to trace this. Use the developer tool and then go to networks. Now if you click create account, you see the success message here. Let's click this one, and you also find the username, password, user email, and PY activity. Everything, the form data, all those data get submitted to the server URL. Now let's see if the operator is successfully created. To do that, you go to records, organization, operator ID. You don't find the operator here. I think it should be with the authorization, but let's quickly check it out. When I check the logs, the reason is because we don't have the privilege. Let's first check the demo create operator, and here if you go to security tab, since I did a save as, in the create operator it was already specialized a privilege as PX can manage users, and that got copied into here, so I can't use this option. That is first one. The second thing, I cannot also use the require authentication to check. Disable it and then provide the right privilege here, then check it. You also need to do one more change. If you go to the access role of alifsec guest, and then if you scroll down, go to the data admin operator ID, and here you should also provide them a privilege to write instances, because we have to create a new operator ID. So just give it as 5 and then do a submit. Now let's go and create a new operator ID. Login, sign up, check, write, okay, rules, and p@g.com. Create account. I have to customize this because I didn't handle error, so it's always showing me that successfully a user account is created. Now if you go to operator and do a refresh, you see check write with PK. This operator is successfully created. Now if I just log off and then do a login, check write with PK, the rules should be rules. See, I'm able to successfully log in. So we have successfully signed up and created a new operator. Now let's quickly add a small validation. What if I try to provide the same username again? Let's say if I try to create tech ride with PK again, if I do a sign up, then it should show me error saying that this instance already exists, right? To do the error handling, I already did changes in two places. One, in the activity. In the demo create operator activity, I called the out of the box activity check keys that helps with checking the duplicate keys. If you open this activity, you can find it checks the duplicates. So when this activity fails, then we can set the error message. Now we have to copy the message. Either it can be a positive message or it can be an error message. We have to send that message to the form, right? So what we can do is we can set the property value, py status value. In case of success, we set a success message, and in case of failure, then we set an error message. Operator is not created because of the error, and then we get the step page error here. So this property is going to hold the status message. And how did I identify this activity is, if you go to create operator, and create operator is going to help with creating an operator out of the box. It's a final rule. If you just navigate into this activity, there they use this to do some validation before you save. So it's always nice to have those activities also in place when you have your own unauthenticated operator creating activity. So this is one change. So with this change, I get the value, the status message into py status value. Then you go to the HTML rule, and in the HTML rule, first you add a Java step. To add any Java step into any HTML rule, you have to do this too. You have to start with this and then use the Java code, and then you have to end it. So here what I did is I just used put param value, and then I find the page of py new operator because that is the page that is used in this activity. And then I get the string py status value and I put it into message param.message. And then finally I referred that param.message into here. You see here I added a new span here, and then I say param.message. So this will be displayed. Now let's check the error handling scenario. I checked in all these rules. Now if you go to new incognito, let's do a final try. Do a sign up, and now let's just create account without giving any username. You see, operator ID is not created because of the error failure opening the class record. Actually, this is an authorization error. To fix this, what you have to do, you have to add one more authorization. In the unauthenticated access role, you have to provide the access to rule hyphen, because in the error if you find, you will find rule obj class, it cannot open it. So what you can do here is you can say 5 on reading. Just do only this and then go back and try to launch it again. We go to localhost and then say sign up. Don't provide anything. You see, now you don't get the authorization error. The other error you get, operator ID cannot be blank. Now if you go to return to login, let's do a final try. I'm going to do a duplicate check here. Check right with PK and then password. I'm going to say rules. Here I'm going to say .com. This also should give me error saying that this instance already exists. So this is how you can do error handling. This is like a server side error handling. You can also do client side error handling. I'll give you a short tip how to do that. If you open this add new operator HTML rule form, there you will find a lot of validation it takes place. For example, if the email ID is not found or if username, if we didn't provide, we can stop there itself. We don't want to submit the form data and get the validation from the server side. Instead, we can handle it by using a function, a client side function. So you can take a look at this add new operator first, the activity, and that activity calls this HTML rule, and the HTML rule will hold all the functions that does the validation. We are almost at the end of this tutorial. I would say I have learned a lot in this tutorial. I came across different issues, different authorization issues, and I'm not able to submit the form data rightly. I just overcame a lot of obstacles before I present you this video. So sharing some important tips. You should always use unauthenticated activities when you use it in the login screen or the sign up button. Never hardcode your username and password into the HTML rule. Instead, you can use pzauth equal to guest as the authentication mode. Always make sure all the activities you see unauthenticated is checked on the security tab. Create a new access role for unauthenticated access group and then provide all the access of role to object and use the right privileges. Build your custom HTML by using the new features of using the div tag. Don't use the table tags. Finally, for debugging, you can always start your remote tracer and then you can trace the unauthenticated session. You can also use the developer tools and the network tab. You will find all the form data that gets submitted as parameter. Always do remember, when you use py activity, you can execute that activity, and in the query string, you can also pass the activity parameter. And do remember, for those activity params, you don't want to specify the name as param dot. You just specify the name directly, the parameter name, and when you submit it via form, it will automatically pass it as parameters. I'm very happy to end this video here, and I'll be too happy if you like and share this video, and if you have some doubts, you can leave a comment on this video. See you soon in the next video.